Hello everyone, this is your friend Shinobi Nexus 2.0 and we are back in new fanfic. What if Naruto awakened the lost Uzumaki Dojutsu after being betrayed Part 2? So you want to get stronger huh? Asked the ex-Anbu commander and received a firm nod in return by Naruto. Naruto and Kakashi were at training ground 9 and Naruto explained to him his reasons on becoming stronger than he already was. Well, alright. I was going to wait until a year before you graduated the academy to start this, but I guess it's a better time than any, said Kakashi. So what are you going to teach me? A new jutsu? More endurance training? Teach me a new taijutsu? Naruto was cut off by his ramblings by Kakashi. Nope. With this, said Kakashi while pulling out a piece of paper. Kakashi-sensei, if this is another one of your jokes, I'm going to tie you up and make you watch me burn every single one of your Ikas one by one, said Naruto in a menacing tone and received a sweat drop in return. No, Naruto, I can assure you this isn't one of my jokes and this isn't average paper, Naruto, it's chakra paper, explained Kakashi and received a raised eyebrow in return. Oh, now I remember. This paper can tell me what my element affinity is. Naruto replied with a grin. Kakashi nodded and said, yes, Naruto, you are correct. Chakra can be converted into one of 5 different elements, to perform jutsu. But you can perform a jutsu without having the affinity for that element, but the only downside to this is that it won't be as powerful or strong and will take more chakra to cast than for someone who does have the affinity for that element. You with me so far? Asked Kakashi to see if he still had Naruto's attention or not. When he received a nod in return by said blonde, he continued, the 5 affinities are water, earth, fire, wind, and lightning. Each country specializes in one of the elements mostly but can have all types. For instance, we are the fire country, so we have a lot of fire users, but we also have other kinds too. Like me, I am a lightning user. Most people have one affinity, maybe 2 to start off with, but as you work hard and get older you can get more affinities. Okay, I think I get it. So how do I know what affinity I have? Naruto asked his lazy one-eyed Junin sensei. For water the paper will get moist, earth the paper will turn to dust, fire the paper will turn to ash, wind will split the paper in 2, and if lightning the paper will crumble. Now take the paper and pour a little bit of chakra into it and it will tell you what your affinity is, Kakashi said, handing Naruto the chakra paper. Naruto nodded, pouring some chakra into the paper. Naruto once he saw the paper split in 2. But before he could celebrate, the other 2 halves shredded to pieces. Which received a raised eyebrow from Kakashi. What does that mean, Kakashi-sensei? Asked Naruto, looking at his sensei quizzically. Kakashi. While scratching his chin before he replied, well, it would seem you have a naturally high affinity for wind. A really high one, in fact. I never seen this before. We will come back to that later. Since we know what affinity you have, let's go to the next step. Kakashi walked to the nearest tree and grabbed 2 leaves off one of the nearest branches. Kakashi walked back to where Naruto was standing and handed him one of the leaves. Now for the next step. The next step, you have to cut the leaf down the middle by only using your wind affinity, explained Kakashi as he was holding one of the leaves and using his lightning affinity made the leaf crumble up. Like so. While you work on this exercise, I'm going to go report to Hokage-sama. I should be back within the hour. Oh, and before I go you should use the Kage Bushin. Later. Finished Kakashi, leaving in a swirl of leaves. Okay. Seems easy enough. Kage Bushin no Jutsu. There was a large cloud of smoke. When the smoke cleared, it revealed 200 copies of the orange-clad shinobi in training. Alright, you heard the Cyclops, let's get this done. With a chorus of hi, they began focusing to cut the leaf down the middle, which would be a lot harder than the blonde initially intended it to be. With Kakashi. So you are beginning elemental affinity training with Naruto-kun. Quite impressive for a 10-year-old boy, I might add. So, is there anything else, Kakashi-san? Asked the aged Hokage, noticing Kakashi's slight nervous posture. It was odd coming from Kakashi, but decided not to call him on it just yet. Yes, Hokage-sama. I think it's time to test Naruto's capabilities with his Shinwagon. If you don't mind, Kakashi said, and Hiruzen couldn't help but smirk. So that's why he is nervous, thought the aged Hokage while taking a puff out of his trusty pipe. Exhaling, Hiruzen replied, well, that's your call, not mine. But if you think he is ready. Tenzo. Not even a second later, there was an Anbu kneeling to the Hokage awaiting what his leader's orders were. Tenzo, you are to accompany Kakashi-san here to Training Ground 9. It's time for you to help train Naruto-kun. I already informed you, and what's you and Kakashi-san may take your leave unless there is anything else, Kakashi-san. When he saw Kakashi shake his head, no, he dismissed them. So Tenzo, it's been a while, how have you been? Asked Kakashi towards Tenzo, who in return gave a simple shrug. Tenzo had short brown hair and black, almond-shaped eyes. He wore the standard attire for the Anbu, a sword was strapped to his back. He wore a mask that resembled a cat's face covered in green and red markings, and he had a tattoo that resembled he was in Anbu. Nothing. Just going on missions really, and since you retired I have became Anbu commander of our old platoon, replied Tenzo. That's good to hear. I'm honored to say that Team RO was left in excellent hands, said Kakashi while they were making their way to Training Ground 9. Thanks, Kakashi, that means a lot, especially coming from you, replied Tenzo. Oh, it's nothing. Let's pick up the pace. I'm sure Naruto will be ecstatic to find out what's next I have planned for him. When he received a nod, they took to the rooftops and made their way to Training Ground 9. With Naruto. Naruto was still trying to cut the leaf in two but was finding it rather difficult to do. He was able to cut the bottom of the leaf maybe a couple centimeters at most, but like they say, every journey always begins with a first step. Naruto thought this was going to be a lot easier than he had imagined, but not even an hour later he cut the leaf, not by much but enough to be called progress. Naruto was about to continue his exercise when someone called out to him. Yo, Naruto, I'm back and I brought a guest with me, said Kakashi, making his way towards Naruto, or the one he thought was Naruto. Hey Kakashi-sensei, who's this? Asked Naruto, looking at the Anbu who was standing next to his sensei. Naruto, this is Tenzo. Tenzo, this is Naruto, said Kakashi. Nice to meet you, kid, said Tenzo. Yay, likewise, replied Naruto, looking back at Kakashi. The real reason I brought Tenzo out here is because Tenzo has a special Kekkei Genkai. Hokage-sama, and I want to know if your Dojutsu can actually copy a Kekkei Genkai. So Naruto, activate your Shinwagon and let's get started, Tenzo, if you will. Without needing Kakashi to elaborate, Tenzo went through a few complex hand seals while ending on the snake hand seal and said, Moku Bushin no Jutsu. Something started coming out the back of Tenzo's neck, and before Naruto knew, there was an exact replica of Tenzo himself. Mokuden would release? Asked a shocked Naruto, looking in the general direction of Tenzo and his Moku Bushin. Yes, Naruto. We want to see if you can copy the Mokuden. While your Bushins work on the leaf-cutting exercise, you will be learning this, explained Kakashi, looking at the shocked state of Naruto. I mean, who could blame him? Mokuden was supposed to be only special to only Senju Hashirama. But here is a man who he never met before and he can use the Mokuden. Not something you see every day. All right, Naruto, Tenzo said, knocking Naruto out of his stupor. The hand seals are tiger, dog, and snake. What you want to do is similar to the cage Bushin, just imagine replicating yourself from yourself. It might be a little uncomfortable when you use it the first few times, but you will get used to it. Now, to know how you are doing it right, you will feel a pull at the back of your neck. Once you feel that pull, add more chakra into the jutsu. That's it, Naruto, now give it a try. Finished Tenzo and looked at Naruto with calculating eyes when Naruto went through the hand seals that Tenzo told him to use. About 45 minutes had passed since Naruto began his new form of training with Tenzo and Kakashi. Naruto was still trying to do the jutsu but to no avail. For the life of him this jutsu was nearly impossible to do. He wasn't going to give because that was against his ninja way. Okay Naruto, you have the right idea but you're not adding enough chakra. Here, watch me again with Yushinwagon. Tenzo said, gaining Naruto's attention. Naruto watching Tenzo with calculating eyes, making sure he didn't miss a thing. Naruto noticed how much chakra Tenzo used, which was significantly higher than a regular Kage Bushin, and noticed the clone coming out behind his neck before making a perfect replica of Tenzo himself. I think I got it this time, thanks Tenzo-sensei. Naruto said and received a nod in return. Another 20 minutes went by and Naruto was getting rather frustrated. Maybe he was doing something wrong, or maybe he was thinking too hard on the matter, or maybe Kakashi, Tenzo, and Tenzo's Moku Bushins were distracting him by playing cards, and Kakashi's complaints about how unfair it was that there were more of Tenzo than himself. He couldn't put his finger on it, but if he could choose, it would have been the last one. So Naruto decided to do it one more time before he took a break. Deciding to put considerably more chakra than he had been in the technique. Naruto felt a weird pull at the back of his neck as if something was trying to get out. Remembering what Tenzo said, Naruto continued to pour more chakra into the technique he was casting. Once he felt the odd sensation at the back of his neck disappear, he heard clapping. Great job Naruto, you did it. They don't look perfect but it's a great start. Tenzo said, and Naruto raised an eyebrow and turned around. Behind Naruto was 3 Moku Bushins of himself. Like Tenzo said, they're not perfect but it's a good start. The Bushins looked like puppets more than anything. But it was a great start. I honestly didn't think you could do it. But I had a slight hope of you pulling it off. I would have expected a Bushin but not 3, but who's counting? Tenzo said in excited tone while digged into his bag and pulled out a scroll fairly bigger than the average scrolls people use on daily basis and handed it to Naruto. Here Naruto. This is a gift from me to you. This scroll contains a lot of the Mokuden's abilities along with jutsus for you to work on. I will stop by once a month to see how your progression is in Mokuden and help you strengthen your Mokuden over time. Well, it's time for me to go and report to Hokage-sama about this, later. With that, Tenzo left in a swirl of leaves. Naruto couldn't help but grin ear to ear. I did it, Kakashi-sensei, can you believe it? Kakashi smiled, which to this day Naruto couldn't understand how Kakashi could do that. Great job Naruto. While you work on perfecting the Moku Bushin, I will go get some food for the both of us. But before he could go, Naruto told him to wait for a second. Yeah, what is it Naruto? Asked the one-eyed Junin. I was just wondering if I could get another one of those chakra papers to test something out, replied the blonde shinobi in training. Kakashi shrugged and handed him one of his chakra papers before leaving in a swirl of leaves as well. Testing his theory, Naruto channeled some chakra into the paper, and what happened next made him grin ear to ear. The paper tore in two, one side turned to dust and the other side became moist before shredding into bits. Hey, so if I copy Kekkei Genkai, I also gain the affinity for that Kekkei Genkai. Makes sense, so I guess this is one of the abilities that Uzumaki Arashi decided to let me learn on my own. Oh yeah, things are just starting to get interesting. Now time for the real training to begin. With that, Naruto began to perfect the Moku Bushins while his Kage Bushin still worked on the leaf-cutting exercise. 1 week later, deciding to take a break from training, Naruto decided to go to the academy as himself for a change instead of sending one of his Kage Bushins. Kakashi was also sent away on a mission for the rest of the week, so Naruto essentially decided to go to the academy. Naruto walked into the classroom and walked to the nearest seat, one that was by the window. Naruto sat down and stared out the window, just thinking how far he came through the years by Kakashi's tutelage. He couldn't help but smirk. Naruto could take on his entire class with his hands tied behind his back and blinded folded and still wouldn't break a sweat. Even the master of brooding, the one and only, Uchiha Sasuke, couldn't match him. Naruto could beat him in every aspect of the shinobi, maybe besides genjutsu. Naruto could dispel genjutsu thanks to Kakashi teaching him how. The only genjutsus that could trap Naruto are A rank and higher, which is pretty good for a 10-year-old child. Naruto was knocked out of his musing when classroom door was slammed open, and of course the Almighty, the Elite, and of course the brooding king, the one and only Uchiha Sasuke, walked in with a horde of fangirls following in suit. If thou speaks thy devil's name, he will appear. Damn it, why can't it be the other way around? I mean, seriously, look at the way he walks, as if we should be honored to be within his presence. What he needs is to remove that rusty metaled spike pull out of his ass, and maybe he might not be much of an ass. Naruto looked away from the last Uchiha, and continued to stare out the window until he heard. "You're in my seat, Dobi, so I suggest you get out of it," said the brooding king. Naruto turned towards Sasuke and started to pick his ear with his pinky. "I'm sorry, you say something, Tem." Somewhere in Fire Country, Kakashi looked up from his battle he was having with a missing nin and pumped a fist in the air with an eye smile which weirded out the missing ninja and yelled, "I knew I would get him to say it one day." After he proclaimed that, Kakashi went back to normal as if nothing had happened and continued fighting the utterly confused missing nin. Back with Naruto. "I have an odd feeling that I made someone's day," thought Naruto before shrugging it off. "I said you are in my seat, Dobi, now get up," Sasuke said in an angered voice. It ticked him off that someone was ignoring him an elite. "Yeah, Naruto baka, get up, that's Sasuke-kun's seat," screeched the pink banshee and Sasuke's biggest fangirl, Haruno Sakura. Ignoring the pink banshee's outburst, he looked at Sasuke and grinned ear to ear. Using the sleight of hand, he stuck an explosion tag, one of his own creations, to the bottom of the chair and another underneath the chair beside him. It won't kill Sasuke, but it will leave a serious bruise to where he won't be able to sit down for a week. And he figured that Sakura would sit next to her precious Sasuke-kun, so she was just the added bonus to this friendly prank. Yeah, prank. "Oh, sorry, McBroodington, here is your seat that you so love and chair-ish. Maybe this chair can help dig out that 10-foot rusty metaled spike pull out your ass as well." "Oh well, that's not my problem later," replied Naruto, standing up and walking back to the back of the room and ignoring the pathetic excuse Ki directed his way by his fangirls. Sasuke only reply to that was his signature line to those he didn't deem worthy with a simple HN. He sat down along with Sakura by his side, who was pestering him for dates, but Sasuke just ignored her requests. Naruto looked at the clock and counted down 3, 2, 1. "Hey now, Kai, release," he whispered. What everyone heard and saw next was a boom with the brooding king and his trusty fangirl aka the pink banshee were sent flying into the air before falling face first on the classroom floor. Both Sasuke and Sakura's rear ends were smoking from the explosion that just occurred by Naruto's doing. The whole classroom erupted in uproar of laughter from what just transpired. And for icing on the cake, Naruto said between his laughter, "Haha. Well, I guess haha." The chair decided not to help but instead shoved the pole even deeper in your anal cavity, ha ha ha. But before anyone else could do or say anything, the door opened and in came their sensei, Iruka. Iruka looked at what happened to his classroom and saw 2 smoking chairs, or for what's left for that matter. He also saw his top 2 students still laying on the floor with their butts smoking. They were in too much pain to move and would hear a groan here and there. "Who did this?" yelled Iruka, using his big-headed no jutsu on the class. Kiba was still laughing and holding his ribs from the lack of oxygen when he was finally to speak. "Ha ha ha, phew. I think we all know who did this, Iruka-sensei, PSSHTTT, ha ha ha. Who could blame Kiba? That was hilarious with a capital H." Uruka gained numerous of tick marks knowing now who did the stunt and when he looked around the classroom for a certain blonde but did not see him. He did notice the back window open where that certain blonde could have escaped. Uruka could not resist the urge to yell in frustration. Ina Erutu u. Yeah, the next 3 years are going to be rather interesting. 3 years later, day before graduation. It was early morning and people starting opening their shops for a new day. It was the day before graduation and Naruto, now of the age of 13 years old, was still snoozing in his bed. Well, that was before the alarm clock started going off, and if fate should have it, the alarm clock was destroyed by Naruto's fist. Naruto groggily sat up in his bed before looking over at what was left of his alarm clock and shrugged before he went back to blissful sleep. During these last 3 years, Naruto's growth was tremendous, and even saying that was an understatement. Naruto far surpassed Kakashi's expectations in his skill as a shinobi, even though Naruto wasn't officially a shinobi for Konoha yet. Naruto's taijutsu was mid to high Junin level even when he had his gravity seals on regular basis, which would make even made a guy sweat, and that's saying something. When he had his gravity seals off, he was far faster than any Chunin and most Junin, but that's a different story. But being realistic, Naruto's taijutsu may be high Chunin to low Junin level because he lacks experience. Naruto's taijutsu style, the whirling tide fist, was perfect for him in every way possible, and Naruto integrated his wind manipulation and his chakra chains into the style, which made it nearly impossible to copy it with its unpredictability. Not even his sensei, Hatake Kakashi, with his Sharingan could not even read his movements coming. Example: just say if someone dodged Naruto's attack by a few inches or more, he could use his wind manipulation to hit them with just as much force as if he hit them. Another example: why it's so hard to track Naruto's movements and what makes them unpredictable. That's where the chakra chains come in. They will move frequently around Naruto to try and cover up what he will do next, and before you knew it, you were either dead or knock on your ass. Even though technically Naruto never beat Kakashi in a taijutsu bout, but that didn't mean he didn't get in a few good hits and made his sensei sweat from overexertion of thinking too hard on what move to use next. Naruto's ninjutsu skills, well, one could say he was a complete utter monster in this category. With his 3 affinities, one which only Kakashi knows about, one which really didn't matter, but in the time frame of the past 3 years he mastered the leaf exercise for all 3. After finishing his leaf cutting exercise in 2 weeks after he started making 100 cage bushins to turn the leaves moist and another 100 to turn the leaves to dust. Within a week's time he got both water and earth manipulation down packed. It was rather easier after already doing it with his wind affinity, so all he had to do was do the same step but switch it up. Instead of cutting the leaf, all he had to do was make the leaves moist and turn the other to dust. Kakashi also went to the next step for his wind manipulation by stopping the flow of a waterfall. Easy, right? It was a long, a grueling process, but Naruto mastered the waterfall exercise in a month's time. Naruto's ninjutsu thrived above and beyond Kakashi's expectations. I mean, the kid was a walking stamina freak along with his chakra reserves that were larger than even the Hokage himself, not by much, but he was 13 years old and they were only going to increase as he gets older. Naruto had learned a wide range of jutsus by Kakashi and his father's library that he learned himself. His jutsu arsenal contains a vast amount of techniques from every affinity and some creations of his own. Naruto chakra control was good but could be better. With his reserves growing daily, he has to continuously do chakra control exercises. But his control was mid to high Chunin level. Naruto learned much from Tenzo in the art of Mokuten, and true to his word, Tenzo stopped by once a month, sometimes twice if he wasn't busy. Tenzo taught Naruto all that he could, teaching everything he knew, every jutsu he learned and gathered through the years. Everything Tenzo taught him, Naruto soaked it up like a sponge does in a bowl of water. And Naruto's personal favorite technique he learned from Tenzo was Mokuten Haijutsu, Jukai Koden would release secret technique, nativity of a world of trees. The technique can grow on any surface and it can easily create a small dense forest if not more anywhere he so chooses. It can be used as an attack and be used for defense, allowing him to capture an enemy at the same time. It was overall the most useful jutsu he had. Naruto's skill in Mokuden was about the same as Tenzo's in strength and in skill. Tenzo was quite proud of Naruto of accomplishing that feat. In throwing weapons, Naruto was outstanding in kunais, shurikens, and senbon as well. He could hit the bullseye every single time, even moving at incredible speeds he could still hit the bullseye marker. Naruto's kenjutsu, he was a prodigy of the art. Naruto doesn't really have a style for the sword. You could say he was a go-with-the-flow type of guy. But like his taijutsu, he integrated his chakra chains with his kenjutsu, making it hard to read his movements. Naruto's kenjutsu was low chunin to maybe mid chunin level. Not bad for someone who doesn't have a style. Now Naruto's genjutsu was non-existent. He could dispel genjutsus but not cast them. He even tried activating his Shinwagon and see if would work that way, but nothing worked, so instead of wasting his time by trying to learn genjutsus, he would just bettering himself by dispelling them. So he had Kakashi cast a multitude of them on Naruto at random times to see if he would catch on to it. Which helped Naruto a lot. Now on to Fuinjutsu. Naruto's level in the art of Fuinjutsu was truly magnificent. He could be called a seal master in the art. His ingenuity in the art of Fuinjutsu was so great that it was scary. But that's partially because of his Shinwagon. His Shinwagon could decipher and decode most Fuinjutsu seals that he had come across in his father's library besides a few. Naruto truly shows of how the Uzumaki's ingenuity were in the art of Fuinjutsu. Speaking of his father's library, Naruto just about read every single book and scroll in Minato's library. He even read books on politics not because he wanted to but because he had to. He knew if he wanted to become Hokage he would need to study up on it. Not him in particular but his Kage Bushins, I mean that's what they were there for, to do the boring stuff. All in all, Naruto was an extremely skilled shinobi, even though he isn't considered a shinobi in Konoha yet, but that will change in due time by tomorrow. 12 minutes after noon, Naruto was peacefully in his bed before he heard a knock at his door. Naruto groaned. Today was supposed to be his day off from training. Deciding not to get up from his bed, he decided to try to go back to sleep. Knock knock knock. Housekeeping, a high-pitched voice said outside his door. Go away, replied Naruto, rolling over on his side. Knock knock knock. Housekeeping, you want towel? The same high-pitched voice said. No towels, need sleepy, Naruto said, getting a little annoyed that the person won't quit. Knock knock knock. Housekeeping, you want me to fluff pillow? Replied the high-pitched voice again, but a little louder. Please go away and let me sleep, for the love of Kami, God, yelled Naruto, completely fed up with the person knocking at his apartment door, and pulled the covers over his head. Knock knock knock. Housekeeping, you want me jerk you off? Said the high-pitched voice again. Naruto eyes opened and got up. What the hell is wrong with this person? Naruto stood approximately 5 foot 8 inches tall and had 2 bangs on either side that framed his face much like his father. Naruto was easily the tallest person in his class and the strongest, I might add. Naruto let out an agitated sigh to himself as he made his way towards the door. Naruto got to the door and opened only to see his one-eyed Junin sensei, who was giving him an odd-eye smile. What caught Naruto's attention were the bags in his hands. But before Naruto asked, he wanted to know something before asking what were in the bags. Was that you, Kakashi Oni-san? It seemed it was more of a statement than a question, and Kakashi saw his apprentice's irritated face. Who, me? I have no idea what you are talking about, Naruto Ototo. I just knocked, replied Kakashi nonchalantly. Yeah, whatever. What's in the bags? Asked Naruto with a questioning look. They are for you. Since you are going to become a shinobi tomorrow, I decided to buy you a new set of attire since the orange jumpsuit sticks out like a sore thumb. And besides, I think you will like what I picked out for you. explained Kakashi with an eye smile. Hey, I like my orange jumpsuit and I like the color orange. Naruto said presently with a tick mark on his forehead. Well, if you want to become a real shinobi, you need to dress like one, replied Kakashi, walking past Naruto and setting the bags on his dining room table and plopped down on Naruto's couch. Naruto sighed. Why was it that everyone hated his orange jumpsuit? I mean, sure, a part of the reason why he wore it for so long was because that all the store owners would kick him out or charge him almost triple the amount of what other people paid for. He actually never even paid for his jumpsuits. He found a box of them in a dumpster that he was ravaging through when he was younger while looking for any type of food after the orphanage kicked him out. They were also warm during those oh so cold nights. They just stuck with him until now. Okay, fine, I'll try the clothes on and see if they fit, and received a nod in return. Naruto grabbed the bags and went to his room to change. About 10 minutes later, Naruto walked out of his room. Gone was the orange baggy jumpsuit. In replace, Naruto was now wearing a long-sleeved black shirt that showed his muscled tone upper body with the Uzumaki insignia on the back of his shirt. Also, he was now wearing baggy black Anbu pants with white strapping going up to his mid-calf and also had white strappings on his right mid-thigh holding his kunai holster in place. Naruto also wore black Anbu sandals to go with his outfit. Well, look at you looking all spiffy and whatnot. But now to add the finishing touch, said Kakashi, pulling out a scroll and putting his hand in the tiger seal and said, Kai, release. And there was a black cloak, or 5 to be exact, that came to existence. Kakashi handed him one of the cloaks and watched Naruto examining it. The cloak was blood-colored red that had pure black-colored flamed designs coming from the bottom of the cloak and the sleeves. The trimming of the cloak had black trimming. Naruto looked at the back of the cloak. The back of the coat had the kanji for Uzumaki Naruto also on the top of his name, and at the bottom of his name were black swirls with 3 black tomos that looked like pupils. Whoa, was all Naruto could before he put it on. Putting his arms through the sleeves, the cloak went all the way down to his mid-calves. Thank you, Kakashi Onisan, said Naruto enthusiastically. It's no problem as long as you get out of the eyesore of a jumpsuit. It was worth spending the money. Well, I gotta go on a mission. See you in a couple of days. Later. And Kakashi was gone in a swirl of leaves. Once Kakashi was gone, Naruto unsealed his sword from a scroll that he found in his father's vault and strapped it to his back. Damn, I look badass. I can't wait to see the look on the people's faces when they see me tomorrow, exclaimed an excited Naruto. His life was going to officially change tomorrow once he aces the academy exams. It was time to show his comrades and the villagers what he is made of. Next day, graduation day. Today was the day. Today was the day that Naruto finally gets to become a shinobi for Konohagakure no Sato. Naruto worked hard to get to this point through blood, sweat, and tears. The time was finally here. It was time for him to show to his comrades and the villagers he wasn't a demon and show how far he will go to such lengths to protect the village. The village that his father and mother gave their lives for, which he would do if the time comes. It was early morning, 2 hours before the academy begun. Naruto was already awake and standing in the middle of training ground 9. There was a gust of wind and Naruto closed his eyes, lifting his head up just a tad and let the breeze blow through his blonde hair. Why was he standing in the middle of training ground 9 and doing this? He was reminiscing. Reminiscing about all the long hours, all the hard work he put training with Kakashi and Tenzo at the training ground. When the breeze stopped, Naruto opened his eyes and took one last look at the training ground he had spent 6 years training at and made his way towards the academy. While he was making his way to the academy, the villagers gave him strange looks as if they didn't recognize him. Naruto couldn't help but not keep the smirk that gradually graced his lips. It was a good feeling that they didn't recognize him and grateful of Kakashi getting his new wardrobe. Because if they did notice him, they would have tried to foolishly apprehend him to not get a shot at graduating the academy. Hey keyword tried. Even though he will protect the villagers once he becomes a shinobi, but he wasn't one yet and he will protect himself and he was not going to let the villagers bully him anymore. The smirking blonde, deciding not to walk anymore, decided to shunshin to the academy. With that said, he left in a swirl of wind and the blonde was gone with no trace of him being there. Naruto was in front of the academy and started making his way towards Iruka's class. Naruto didn't need to be there for another hour, but he was just excited of becoming a shinobi. He just couldn't help but be early. Naruto opened the door to the classroom and he saw Iruka at his desk probably grading some papers or something. Iruka looked up and saw a blonde with two bangs framing his face with a blood-colored red cloak with black flames coming from the bottom of his cloak and his sleeves. Iruka looked at the boy who had a lot of similarities to their deceased Hokage, Yondaime. Iruka looked at the boy with calculating eyes, and one distinctive feature he saw on the look like Yondaime were whisker marks. Whiskers. Then it finally clicked. Naruto? Asked Iruka with a perplexed look. Naruto grinned ear to ear and Naruto replied, the one and only, Iruka-sensei. Naruto couldn't help but sweat drop as he saw Iruka put his hand in the tiger seal and repeated over and over, Kai, release Kai, Kai. Why won't this genjutsu dispel? You can't be Naruto, yelled a shocked Iruka. And why would you say that, Iruka-sensei? Asked a confused Naruto. I mean, sure, he did change his attire, but he wouldn't have thought that Iruka would do this. You're early. An hour early, yelled Iruka, making Naruto face fault. I'm not that bad. Naruto fired back, which in return gave Iruka a tick mark. Naruto, you have the worst attendance and tardies in this academy's history. I'm even surprised you get a chance to pass the academy today. But Hokage-sama was rather insistent that I give you a chance, so I am. I was actually about to leave to go get you to make sure you were here on time so you didn't get another tardy on your last day. I'm just tempted to pass you so I don't have to deal with you or your tardiness next year. But since you are here, you saved me some time to actually get some paperwork done. So I'll see you in a little bit. Oh, and before I leave, Mizuki should be here in 15-20 minutes. Also, please do not do any pranks while I'm gone, or at all for that matter. Asked Iruka with a pleading voice. I promise I won't do any pranks today, Iruka-sensei. You have my word. Naruto replied and received a thankful nod in return by Iruka. Okay, well, I'll see you later, Naruto. I should be back before class begins. With that said, Iruka left with a stack of papers in his hand and walked out the door. Naruto looked around the empty classroom and decided to sit in the back of the class. Naruto was excited. Today was the day. No more sitting through Iruka's boring lectures, even though he was hardly there, and now he gets to go on missions. He knew he had to go on D ranks to start off, but that's what Kage Bushin was for. While Naruto was waiting for class to begin, he saw his fellow classmates started filing in either one by one or some in groups. Also, like usual, the brooding king aka Uchiha Sasuke walked in with his horde of his fangirls in tow. And true to Iruka's word, Mizuki showed up 20 minutes later. About 5 minutes after Mizuki showed up, Iruka came into the classroom. After about 10 minutes, everyone was at the academy and Iruka began roll call. Hello everyone, class is in S's. Iruka stopped in mid-sentence after he noticed he didn't have his students' attention. Iruka cleared his throat, cracked his neck and back before using his jutsu that he created himself, the big-headed no jutsu. Silence. Iruka yelled and inwardly patted himself on the back, seeing that everyone seemed to quiet down and were paying full attention towards himself. After everyone quieted down, Iruka started roll call and going through the names on his list until he reached Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto, said Iruka. Naruto raised his hand and replied, here. Everyone in class jaws dropped. Well, most had their jaws dropped. Some of the girls in the class had small blushes grace their faces. Was that really Naruto? It couldn't be. What are you all staring at? Asked a confused Naruto. You're actually here. You're on time. You're not wearing that horrid orange jumpsuit anymore. Were most of the replies he received from his fellow classmates. Which in return, Naruto could only sweat drop. Alright, enough. Today, as you know, is the Genin graduation exams. There are two parts to the exam. The first is the written exam consisting of basic knowledge you should know of being a shinobi. The second and the last part of the exam is the ninjutsu portion, which consists the three basic academy jutsu. Any questions? When he received none, he passed out the papers for the written exam. Okay, you have 30 minutes to complete the written portion. After the 30 minutes are up, I will call time and you will stop writing. You will hand me your test and sit back down and wait to be called for the ninjutsu portion of the exam. After your name is called, you will go to classroom across the hall where Mizuki and I will conduct the ninjutsu portion of the exam. Once you pass, or if you pass, you will receive a Konoha Hitai 8. After you receive your Hitai 8, you may leave, but you must be back here in 2 days for team placements, at 8 in the morning sharp. And that means you as well, Naruto. That is all, you may begin. Finished Iruka and was pleased to hear pencil hitting paper after he finished. Naruto looked at his test and saw that the test was on basic knowledge of being a shinobi like Iruka said. While Naruto was writing his answers to the questions on his test, he felt as if someone was watching him. Naruto looked up from his test and looked around the room. He saw his sensei Mizuki eyeing him down with an evil smirk which unnerved Naruto. Why is he staring at me like that? Whatever, I'll look into it later. Naruto thought to himself. Naruto continued with his test before he was finished with 5 minutes to spare. Naruto answered enough of them right so he could pass the written portion. He didn't want to answer all of them right because he was still keeping his mask up until he graduated. He promised Kakashi so he will keep his mask up, for now. After the 30 minutes were up, Iruka called time. Everyone in class stood up and gave their test sheets to Iruka and sat back down and awaited for the last portion of the exams to begin. Iruka begun calling out names and one by one the shinobis in training went to the room across the hall for the last portion of the exam. Naruto was the last name to be called. It's time. Finally. Naruto stood from where he was sitting and made his way to the room across the hall. Naruto opened the door and saw Iruka and Mizuki sitting at a long rectangular desk. Iruka smiled at Naruto and said, "Are you ready, Naruto?" And he received a nod in return. Okay, the first jutsu I want you to perform is the Kawarimi no Jutsu, said Iruka as he threw a chalkboard eraser at Naruto's head. There was a poof of smoke and there was log that was laying where Naruto once stood. Naruto appeared from the window that was in the classroom with a grin on his face. Great job. Okay, next is Henge no Jutsu, said Iruka with hope in his eyes that Naruto might actually pass. Naruto nodded without using hand seals, which Iruka noticed as well as Mizuki. Naruto henge into a perfect replica of the Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen. Mizuki, seeing what was happening, he mentally seethed. Damn it. What is going on? He could never do these techniques last week. If he passes, what am I going to do about the Fuin no Sho, Scroll of Seals? Maybe I can still find a different way to trick him into getting it for me. Fantastic. Now Naruto, the last and final one I'll like for you to perform is the Bushin no Jutsu. The minimum number of bushins I would like for you to do is 2. Iruka said. Naruto inwardly groaned. Why did it have to be a regular bushin? Oh well, time to give a shot. Bushin no Jutsu. There was a small smoke cloud. When the smoke cleared, it revealed a clone of some sort that looked half dead and pale as can be. Even its clothes were pale, laying next to the original Naruto, who was crying anime tears. Or maybe not, thought Mizuki. Iruka face faulted and Mizuki had a menacing grin that went unnoticed by Iruka but not Naruto. Damn it. It seems I still can't perform the bushin. Iruka, do you mind if I do a different bushin? Asked Naruto, looking at Iruka pick his face off the ground. Literally. Yes, you may. Replied Iruka, who was praying to Kami that Naruto passes. Mizuki raised an eyebrow. The only other Bushin he knows about was the Kage Bushin no Jutsu, Naruto said, which shocked Iruka that Naruto knew a B-ranked kinjutsu that could possibly kill some Junin. There was a puff of smoke when it cleared. There was 10 replicas of Naruto standing there with grins that threatened to split their face. Iruka's face was gaping like a fish, but he soon snapped out of it and threw Naruto a hit-I-8, which he caught and said happily, "You pass. Congratulations, Naruto. We will see you in 2 days' time for team placements." Naruto smirked and wrapped the hit-I-8 around his forehead, letting his bangs fall from the sides and frame his face. He was a shinobi of the leaf and he was going to represent Konoha proudly. While Naruto made his way out the door, he caught a glimpse of Mizuki glaring at him. Naruto just shrugged it off like he would do with the villagers. Outside the academy. Naruto made his outside the academy with a grin and his arms resting around his head, showing off his hit-I-8 proudly. Naruto saw his fellow classmates outside being congratulated by their parents and other family members. The grin on Naruto's face slowly turning into a frown once he saw that nobody was there to congratulate him. No father, no mother, or no family. Naruto just started to walk, where he didn't know. Naruto passed the parents and their children that passed the genin exams, and there they were again. The whispers and the hateful glares. How could they let that thing become a shinobi? That damn demon. Maybe we will all be lucky enough that he will die on a mission. Ha, look at that. No one came to congratulate the demon. HMPH, figures no one cares for the damn thing anyway. The comments just kept coming into Naruto's enhanced senses. He heard every single one of them. Once Naruto was out of sight, he shunshin away. The only other person who saw and heard everything was Mizuki, who smirked and had one thought on his mind. Gotcha. Now all I have to do is convince him and the Fuin no show will be mine, thought Mizuki, leaving in a swirl of leaves. Once Mizuki left, the crowd of people burst into a puff of smoke as if they were never there. With Naruto atop the Hokage monument. Naruto was sitting on top of the fourth's head looking over the village, the frown still ever present on his face. Naruto continued looking over the village for about another 10 minutes before a voice broke him out his sulking. "What's wrong, Naruto?" A familiar voice said. Naruto didn't need to turn around, already knowing who it was. "What do you want, Mizuki-sensei?" replied Naruto dryly. "Well, I came here to congratulate you on passing the genin exam and becoming a genin. It's probably really hard not having parents to congratulate you on this special occasion. Especially with all the villagers giving you a hard time," said Mizuki with a reassuring smile and taking a seat on the ground next to Naruto. Naruto narrowed his eyes at his sensei, and replied, "What are you getting at, Mizuki?" "I'm not getting at nothing. I just wanted to say congratulations since no one did besides Iruka and I. There is something I would like to ask you though," Mizuki said, gaining Naruto's attention. "Yeah, and what is that?" replied Naruto, looking back over the village. "Why haven't you tried to get revenge against the villagers that seem to spite you for even the simplest things such as breathing?" Mizuki asked, gaining the blonde's full attention. Naruto shrugged and laid down with his arms behind his head and looked at all the puffy white clouds in the beautiful blue sky. "I don't know. If I just started getting revenge on everybody I saw or who treated me wrong, there wouldn't be much of a village left, and I'm not strong enough to do that." Mizuki inwardly smirked and thought, hook, line and sinker. Now to reel him in. "What if I told you there was a way for you to get this power and strength to get back at all the people who wrong your whole life?" said Mizuki. "Okay, I'm listening," replied Naruto, which he received a sadistic grin in return that didn't go unnoticed by Naruto. "Now I'm only going to tell you this once. In the Hokage Tower there is scroll called Fuin no Sho. The scroll is on an altar in the 2 doors down from the Hokage's office. Inside of said scroll are powerful kinjutsu. With these kinjutsus we could bring down all of the elemental nations if we absolutely wanted to. And most importantly, your revenge against the villagers that you so happily crave. Mizuki said, standing up with a menacing smirk on his face. Okay, but if we do this we will have to meet up somewhere and leave the village. Once they find out, they will be after us as long as it takes to get that scroll back from what you said it contains. So what time do you want me to steal the Fuin no Sho and where should we meet up? Asked Naruto with a determined look on his visage. Here. This will tell you what time and a map where we will meet up at. It's a small shack just a little ways outside the village walls. Be there by 2 in the morning and we will leave this Kami forsaken village, once I get there, said Mizuki and received a nod in return. With that said, Mizuki left in a swirl of leaves, but he never noticed the smirk that gradually graced his lips. Naruto looked around to make sure Mizuki was nowhere to be found. Naruto said, "Did you get all that Hokage Oji-san and Kakashi Oni-san?" Asked Naruto out loud. After he finished, there were 2 puffs of smoke. When it cleared, it revealed Sarutobi Hiruzen and Hatake Kakashi. Kakashi and Hiruzen nodded and made their way to Naruto. Yes, we did, Naruto. I can't believe Mizuki would betray Konoha in such a way like this, said the aged Hokage in clear shock. Hokage-sama, what should you have us do? Do you want us to subdue Mizuki and bring him in for questioning? Or do? Kakashi was cut off by Hiruzen raising his hand for him to stop. Hiruzen sighed and replied, Naruto will continue out with Mizuki's plan and Naruto will subdue him. Naruto, it's time to put Kakashi's teachings to the test and see how far you've grown. Kakashi, you will watch from the shadows and assist Naruto if he needs it, or if there is more of my shinobi that decided to become traitors of this village along with Mizuki. This is AA rank capture and subdue mission. Naruto, can you handle this? Asked Hiruzen with a serious expression on his face that showed failure was not an option. Hiruzen knew of Naruto's capabilities and knew he could do it. Besides being trained by some of his best Junin in the village for 6 years, he had no doubt in his mind that Naruto could defeat and subdue Mizuki. Hi, Hokage-sama. This is my first mission as a Konoha shinobi, and with my Nindo on the line I will not fail. Replied Naruto, which he received a grandfatherly smile and a eye smile in return. What time does he want you to steal the Fuin no Sho, Naruto? Asked Kakashi. Naruto opened up the paper slip that Mizuki gave to him and replied, he wants me to start the operation at 10 at night and he wants us to meet up at a shack west of the village walls. It's about an hour from the Hokage Tower. So I would have to wait 3 hours for him to get there. What the hell am I supposed to do for 3 hours? Naruto said in frustration, which he received a eye smile in return. You could just pretend that you are waiting for me if you want. I'm normally 3 hours late, so it shouldn't be too hard. Kakashi said and received a glare in return by said blonde. Maybe I could learn a jutsu out of the scroll while I wait. Hokage Oji-san? Asked an excited Naruto, which received a sigh in return. I wouldn't recommend doing that, Naruto. We will see you at 10 tonight, alright? Hiruzen didn't let Naruto get a chance to argue and left in a swirl of leaves along with Kakashi. Naruto pouted for a second before a smile crept to his face. Haha, he said he wouldn't recommend doing it. He didn't give me a direct order. So I know what I'm going to do for those 3 hours. Who has 2 thumbs and gets to train out of the Fuin no Sho? Yeah, you know it, this guy. Naruto said with a shit-eating grin and left in a swirl of wind. 2 in the morning outside of Konoha's walls. Naruto was breathing heavy on his hands and knees with the Fuin no Sho laying out in front of him. Naruto had trained for the past 3.5 hours with the complex kinjutsu out of the scroll, which were a lot harder than Naruto would have liked, but he still learned a new jutsu he thought would come in handy. Naruto smiled to himself with the accomplishment of learning a kinjutsu in a little over than 3 hours, but he was cut out of his musings by a voice. Do you copy, Naruto? Asked Kakashi through his earpiece. Yes, I'm ready. Is he almost here? Asked Naruto through his. He should be there within the next minute. Remember to ask him what we told you. We need to know who is after the scroll specifically, and we would also like to know if there are any others working with or for him. He's here, I got your back if you need it. Replied Kakashi, who was waiting to strike if Naruto needed him. This was Naruto's mission, and it was time to see if he can handle his own against other trained shinobi. Kakashi knew Naruto wasn't going to lose knowing Naruto, but it was better to be safe than sorry. Copy. Naruto whispered to Kakashi while tying the Fuin no Sho to his back and awaited for Mizuki to arrive. About 10 seconds later, Mizuki appeared on a branch overhead. Mizuki had shoulder-length white hair with a slight hint of blue. He had green eyes and wore the standard attire of a Chunin and wore his Hittite bandana style. He also had 2 overly large shurikens on his back. Were you followed? Asked Naruto, gaining Mizuki's attention. No, but I'm actually surprised you could steal the scroll without anyone noticing, said a surprised Mizuki. Well, I can thank my pranks on that one. It taught me to become really good at stealth and hide my presence quite easily after a while. I even gave the Anbu the slip multiple times even when wearing my orange jumpsuit, replied Naruto with a smirk on his face, remembering all the pranks he did when he was younger. I guess that came in handy, didn't it? Okay, toss me the scroll and let's head out before anyone notices the scroll missing, said Mizuki, holding out his hand waiting for Naruto to toss him the scroll. Naruto took the scroll off his back and was about to throw it to him, but before he did, he asked, I have a question. Before we go, I would like to know where we are going after this. Mizuki let out a frustrated sigh and replied, we are going to Otogakure to meet someone there. And I'm assuming we will be giving this scroll to them when we get there. Do you mind if I ask who? Asked Naruto, examining Mizuki, and saw he was getting more and more frustrated with Naruto as time passed. What's with all the questions? If you must know, it is one of the legendary Sannin, Orochimaru. He will give me what I have most craved for the longest time since I was your age, power. Uncontrollable power. Replied Mizuki, losing his patience while holding out his hand again, and replied, now, give me the scroll and let's go. Okay, but let me ask one more question. Is there more shinobi we are meeting up with us, or someone from our village or another village? Naruto asked again, and making Mizuki furious. No. Now give me the damn scroll before I'll kill you myself, yelled Mizuki, losing his cool and holding out his hand again. Okay, geez, stop getting mad, for crying out loud. Oh, and one more thing before we go, you might want to take a look behind you, said Naruto with fox-like smirk on his face. Mizuki turned just in time to get a bone-crushing punch to the face that sent him flying in the opposite direction by said fist. Before he could crash into something, there was a black chain with red kunai-like spikes that shot out the ground and wrapped itself around Mizuki's waist. It twirled him around before throwing him back to the place where he was dealt a bone-crushing punch. Mizuki saw Naruto jump in the air above him before being heel-kicked in the face and plummeted to the ground below, creating a small crater where he landed. Naruto landed gracefully on his feet and waited for Mizuki to pick himself off the ground. That actually hurt, you damn demon, replied Mizuki while standing up on wobbly legs with blood coming out of his mouth. Mizuki spat out some of the blood that was in his mouth and said, it's too bad you have to die tonight. I was going to kill you on our way to Otogakure, but I guess right now is better than any, said Mizuki while taking off one of his giant shuriken and jumping up to one of the nearest tree branches above. Mizuki started to spin it in his hand and threw it at Naruto. Naruto stood there with a blank face, and before the shuriken could reach him, a chakra chain shot out of the ground and went through the handle of the shuriken and threw it back with the same velocity. Naruto went through a set of hand seals and yelled out, Shuriken Kage Bushin no Jutsu. Shuriken Shadow Clone Technique. The one overly large shuriken turned into 8 and headed for Mizuki. who had a look of shock ever present on his face of what happened but recovered quickly. He wasn't a Chunin for nothing. Jumping out of the way of the shurikens that threatened to tear him into pieces, which instead tore away the tree he threw the shuriken from. Poor tree. After Mizuki was out of harm's way, Naruto was already pressing him back with little difficulty. Mizuki tried his best at defending against Naruto, but he was relentless. Mizuki noticed that Naruto was going for pressure points to disable his limbs, which luckily Mizuki dodged just in the nick of time on most, but once he dodged he would get hit in the face, ribs, or stomach for his troubles. Mizuki jumped back and stopped about 25 yards away from the young blonde. Mizuki was barely standing on his 2 feet, and if looks could kill Naruto would have been dust. "What the hell are you?" asked the beaten and bruised Chunin. "Who, me? Uzumaki Naruto, we met before, right?" asked Naruto with a nonchalant look. "Don't play games with me. You can't be that demon. Someone as worthless as him who has nobody or who nobody likes could be this strong. I should have killed you already, but I haven't even laid a finger on you. You were the dead last, a nobody, but how? I don't understand. I should have this power. Not you," yelled Mizuki, taking a kunai out of his kunai pouch. Making his last-ditch effort, which he tried to kill the blonde Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Keyword tried. Naruto looked at Mizuki with cold, hardened eyes that showed no compassion, no sympathy, no fear, just coldness. Worthless, I'll show him who is truly worthless, thought Naruto. Mizuki smirked after he saw he was mere inches away from Naruto's throat with his kunai. 8 inches, 6 inches, 3 inches, 1 inch. ... Before Mizuki could celebrate, there was only one thing he heard, just one simple word. Boom. Naruto said before blowing up in a small explosion. It was a head-on explosion, so Mizuki took the brunt of the force. Mizuki was sent flying back and impacted into a tree that left a crater in said tree, before sliding to the ground unconscious. Mizuki was smoking with singes all over his body. That jutsu could have killed him if he put more chakra into the clone. Naruto stepped out behind a tree and put a chakra suppression seal on the smoking man. Literally. "Ha! Worthless, you should look in the mirror, pal, but if I were you I would wait like a couple weeks, cause you look like you came from hell and back." Haha, I need to write that one down, that was a good one. Finished Naruto, taking out a scroll and put Mizuki in a containment seal so he couldn't escape even if he tried to. Naruto heard clapping and looked at his sensei of 6 years that was like a big brother to him. "That was amazing, Naruto. That was an excellent use of the Bushin Daibakua. Especially, that you just learned how to use the technique. You did well on your first mission as a genin. I am proud to be called your sensei," said his lazy sensei and brother in everything but blood. "Let's go and give our report to Hokage-sama." Once he received a nod in return, Kakashi put his hand on Naruto's shoulder and they both left in a swirl of leaves. Hokage Tower 15 minutes after 3. Excellent job, Naruto. Even though you didn't listen to me and still looked in the Fuin no show, I'll let it pass. You did well, and as a reward your payment for AA rank mission, said the aged Hokage with a proud smile on his visage and handed the blonde genin an envelope. Naruto looked inside of it and gaped like a fish. There was enough money in here to go on a 3-month eating spree at Ichiraku's. He wasn't going to do that, but be responsible with his earnings he received. Thanks, Hokage Oji-san. Not to sound rude or anything, but can I go home and rest? I'm tired as hell, asked Naruto and received a grandfatherly laugh in return. Of course you can, Naruto. Kakashi and I will finish up here while you go rest. Remember to take your photo for your shinobi ID card tomorrow afternoon, replied Hiruzen. How could I forget? Well, anyway, I'll catch you guys later, Naruto said, leaving in a swirl of wind. After Naruto left, Hiruzen looked at Kakashi before asking, do you know what are my 2 greatest decisions I've ever made as Hokage up till now, Kakashi? Kakashi raised his lone eyebrow and asked, "No, what are they, Hokage-sama?" Hiruzen let a small smile grace his lips before replying, "One of them was, stepping down as Hokage and chose Minato to become my successor." "And the other, Hokage-sama?" asked Kakashi with an interested look. "The other one is that I let you become Naruto's sensei. Naruto was so lonely as a child, but you saved him from that, Kakashi. You became a brother-like figure to him, you trained him, and took him under your wing. Now look at him, you have trained him into an excellent shinobi. I am proud to say that was my greatest decision as Hokage up till this point." Kakashi smiled and replied, "Thank you, Hokage-sama." "No, Kakashi-san, thank you." 2 days later at the academy. Everyone that was in the academy were bustling with excitement. Today was team placements and Naruto couldn't help but smirk. No more holding back. No more of keeping up the facade of being the dead last. It was time for him to show his true potential. Naruto looked around the classroom and noticed that Iruka was still not there. He was probably being informed about Mizuki's betrayal to Konoha by Hiruzen. He felt sorry for Iruka knowing that Mizuki was a good friend of his, but that was the life as a shinobi. There were always traitors and they could quite possibly be your best friend, brother, sister, father, or even your mother. That's the reality of being a shinobi that have to live with. Naruto's musings were interrupted by the door being swung open by Sasuke's biggest 2 fangirls. Haruno Sakura and Yamanaka Ino. Sigh. It was the same thing every day. Ha, I win, Ino pig. I get to sit next to Sasuke-kun. Screeched Sakura with her fist pumped into the air, which received a glare from Ino. The only way you would have won was because of that forehead of yours, and you didn't win, I did. So I get to sit next to Sasuke-kun, forehead. Ino yelled, which received a growl in return from Sakura. What was that, Ino pig? Oh, you heard me, forehead. Sakura and Ino said while glaring about a foot away from each other. Everyone in the room could have sworn they saw electricity spark between the two of them. While they were having their little stare down, all the other fangirls decided to step in and say how they were there first, so they should sit next to their Sasuke-kun. Naruto let out an exasperated sigh. Didn't they know there were 2 seats next to their precious Sasuke-kun? Before anything could get out of line, Iruka walked in and quieted everyone down using his signature jutsu, big-headed no jutsu. Good morning, everyone. Today is the day that you all begin your life and career as a shinobi for your village, Kanagaku no Sato. I am proud that I was your sensei and looking forward to where your shinobi careers take you. I am proud of all of you. Especially you, Naruto. Iruka kept that last part to himself but glanced at Naruto, who was staring out the window before Naruto looked to the front of class. Ahem. Without further ado, team placements. Team 1 is. Iruka called out most of the civilians to be placed in teams 1 through 6 until the 7th team. Team 7 will consist of Haruno Sakura, which the pink-haired girl perked up at hearing her name called. Uchiha Sasuke. And like usual, Sasuke was looking out the window acting like he didn't hear Iruka call out his name. Before Iruka called the next name, Sakura jumped out of her seat with her fist held high, claiming true love conquers all or some type of bullshit like that. And Iruka gave Sakura like she was stupid or something before he continued. Uzumaki Naruto. Shit. Thought Naruto. Your Jonin sensei will be Hitaki Kakashi. Well, that's not too bad. At least Ni-san is still my sensei. After Naruto thought that he felt someone staring at him. Turning his head to the right, he saw the quiet and shy Hyuga heiress, who had a sad look on her face before looking away, sporting a blush on her face. Cute. Thought Naruto. Team 8 will consist of Aburame Shino, Hyuga Hinata, and Inuzuka Kiba. Your Jonin sensei will be Yuhi Kurenai. Team 9 is still in circulation. Team 10 will consist of Akamichi Choji, Nara Shikamaru, and Yamanaka Ino. Your Jonin sensei will be Sarutobi Asuma. After Iruka named all the teams, Shikamaru and Choji fist bumped. Ino complained about being on the same team with the lazy Nara and the chubby Akamichi, which said Nara had to hold back Choji from clobbering Ino and new comrade. Well, good luck, I'll be leaving now. Your senseis should be here soon. Iruka left while some of the Jonin senseis started filing in and picking up their students. 20 minutes later, and only Team 7 remained. Naruto sighed while he stood up and made his way to the opened window. Where are you going, Dobi? Asked the last Uchiha, gaining Naruto's attention before he jumped out the window. To get lost on the path of life, Tem, maybe you should too, instead of brooding all the time. Before Sasuke could retort, Naruto leapt from the windowsill, leaving the brooding Uchiha and his pink-haired teammate. With Naruto 23 minutes later near Training Ground 3. Naruto leapt into the clearing looking for a certain silver-haired Cyclops Jonin. Making his way towards where he will most likely find him, the memorial shrine. A couple minutes of walking to the memorial shrine, he saw his sensei like usual standing in front of the shrine. You know, they would want you to move on with your life instead of withering away in front of that shrine, said Naruto to the stocked still form of Kakashi. Kakashi finally moved his lone eye towards his apprentice before looking back to the memorial shrine. Yeah, I know, but it feels like I just owe it to them from what happened, especially Rin. Kakashi said with a downcast look, looking at the name he just mentioned. Sighing, Naruto replied, Look, Kakashi-ni. You can't keep doing this to yourself, you have to move on with your life and stop living in the past. They wouldn't want you to feel guilty for what happened. They did those things for you and for the safety of Konoha. Kakashi looked up from the stone to Naruto, then looking back. Kakashi turned to Naruto with an eye smile, which Naruto to that he didn't know how he did it. You're right, Naruto. I promise I'll try to move on from the past. How long before we have to get to the academy, my time? Naruto smirked and said, a couple hours and some change, why? How about a little spar between brothers, and comrades? His only reply was Naruto taking off his jacket and drawing his sword. I'll take that as a yes, said Kakashi before lifting his Hitai-8 up, showing his Sharingan and adding, now I'll show you why they call me Sharingan no Kakashi. Well, I'm going to show you some things that even the Sharingan can't copy, said Naruto while activating his Shinwagon and slapping his hands together. Mokuten Haijutsu. Jukai Koden would release secret technique. Nativity of a world of trees. A second later, trees upon trees started growing out of nowhere, trying to ensnarl Kakashi, but before the trees could reach him, he jumped out of the way while going through hand seals himself before shouting. Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu, fire style. Great fireball technique, shouted Kakashi before spewing out a huge ball of fire towards Naruto's direction. Naruto jumped out of the way, ending his technique, landing about 25 yards away from his sensei comrade, Big Brother. Lesson 1. Taijutsu, said Kakashi before getting in the Goken stance. His left arm was behind his back and his right arm was extended out with his hand extended out before he used the come hither motion with his right hand. Naruto grinned before putting one hand in the ram seal and thought, Kai, release. Naruto stretched out, getting used to his body being so light. After he finished stretching, he stood there looking at Kakashi with the same grin. Neither moved an inch. A leaf was blown off by a small gust of wind and slowly descended between the two combatants before landing in the middle between the two. As the leaf landed, both disappeared from view, showing the fight had started. The one man that was once called God of Shinobi, for his prowess on and off the battlefield. Who has mastered all of the shinobi arts and all of the jutsus in Konohagakure no Sato besides personal jutsus from clans. He was feared when he was on the battlefield, he was respected in his village, and he was a beloved husband, father, and grandfather. There was only one man that he thought that passed him in every aspect as a shinobi, and that man was Namikaze Minato. The Konoha no Kiroi Senko, Konoha's Yellow Flash, the fastest man alive who destroyed an entire battalion made up of 1,000 of Iwagakure no Sato's best forces single-handedly in a mere few seconds. He single-handedly won them the Third Shinobi War with that feat. After the war was over, Hiruzen decided to step down and named his new successor. He chose the man who he thought could lead Konoha to greater heights than he ever could. He chose his former student's apprentice Namikaze Minato as the fourth Hokage. Minato's run as Hokage was short-lived. A couple of years after his inauguration to the mantle of Hokage, the Kyuubi no Yoko attacked, nearly destroying their village in the process. Minato stopped the great beast and ended up sealing the Kyuubi in his newborn son, Naruto. Minato sacrificed his life by using the Fuinjutsu, Shiki Fuin Reaper Death Seal. Hiruzen always regretted that he didn't take Minato's place. Naruto would have had a better life, and maybe Minato could have saved Kushina in the process as well, even after having a biju ripped out of her seal that contained the Kyuubi. Hiruzen let out a deep sigh, and maybe he wouldn't be in the predicament he was in now. A council meeting. A council meeting that involved a certain blonde and his promotion to genin. I say we should imprison the beast. He is getting too strong for his own good, exclaimed a middle-aged civilian named Hibiki. All of the civilian council agreed. The shinobi council just shook their heads, wondering why the civilians were getting into shinobi affairs, again. All the major clans were the heads to the shinobi council. The Hyuga clan head was Hyuga Hiashi. Hiashi had long black hair and featureless white eyes. He wore loose-fitting robes with a long-sleeved, brown haori. He had two daughters, Hinata and Hanabi Hyuga. Hiashi was neutral to the situation, but he didn't see any problems with the Jinchuriki being a shinobi. The Nara clan head was Nara Shikaku, father of Nara Shikamaru. Shikaku and his son looked identical besides the scars on the right side of Shikaku's face. He had dark hair tied up in a ponytail that resembled a pineapple. He had black eyes as well as a goatee. He knew who Naruto was and who his parents were. He even encouraged his son to be friends with the boy. Unlike the civilians, he saw no problem with Naruto being a shinobi. The remaining clan heads were the Akamichi, who was led by Choza, and Choji's father. The Yamanaka, led by Inoichi, he was also Ino's father. The Inazuka, led by Sume, she was Kiba's and Hana's mother. The Aburame, led by Shibi, he was Shino's father. They all thought along the same lines as both Hiashi and Shikaku. They were also the advisors for the Hokage, Mitokado Homura, Udatane Kaharu, and Shimura Danzo. These three were indifferent towards Naruto. And if you read other fanfics or watch the Naruto anime, you know who they are. No point in going into detail with them. What do you say, Hokage-sama? Should we imprison the demo? Hibiki was cut off by Hiruzen when killing intent flooded the room. The whole civilian council could hardly breathe, on the verge of pissing themselves from the pressure of his ki. Killing intent. Careful what you say around me, Hibiki-san, my law is still in effect. If this is what you all called me here for, then I'm leaving. Naruto is under my command now, which involves shinobi matters. Do you have any power over my shinobi? No. You don't, really. I had no idea. If that's the case, then civilian, if we ever have a meeting like this again about Naruto or any of my other shinobi that are under my command, you will be prosecuted to the highest extent of the law for treason. And that goes for the rest of you. Do I make myself clear? Hiruzen said with a menacing glare towards the civilians' side, who were sweating bullets. Hi, Hokage-sama. They chorused nervously. This meeting is adjourned, Hiruzen said as a headache threatened to split his head in two. Hiruzen made his way out of the council room and back to his office. I'm getting too old for this, he thought with a sigh. I wonder how Naruto is doing. With Naruto training ground 3 1 hour later. Speaking of our favorite blonde, he was panting heavily with sweat pouring down his face, with his traditional fox-like smirk ever present on his face. Naruto was covered in cuts and bruises. His new attire that he had gotten from his surrogate brother now ruined thanks to Kakashi. Naruto could care less though he was having the time of his life sparring against the one man he called brother. Naruto wasn't the only one looking worse for wear. Kakashi was crouched down trying to regain his breath. These were the times he cursed that he only had above average sized chakra reserves. His reserves have grown a lot since he had been training Naruto, but his reserves weren't on the level of Naruto's. Not even close. Kakashi's compared to Naruto's was like comparing a pond to an ocean. The scary part was that Naruto's reserves have grown daily. Kakashi hasn't been pushed like this in a long time. Not that he would admit that to the young blonde, but he would admit he was quite proud of his protege. He has grown so much from the boy now, from the boy he took under his wing only a few years ago. If he kept growing at this rate, he would surpass his father and then some. He was brought out of his musings by said blonde. You had enough yet, Kakashi ni, because if you're not, I've still got a lot left in the tank to keep going, said Naruto with a confident smirk as his Shinwagon eyes outfaced his surrogate brother's lone Sharingan eye, who was still crouching on the ground. Arrogance will only bring your own downfall, Naruto. Always remember that, Kakashi said, appearing behind Naruto with a kunai at his neck, and the crouched Kakashi poofed in smoke. Always remember to look. The Cyclops was cut off by a kunai held to his throat. Always remember to look underneath the underneath, the blonde said with a fox-like smirk as his clone poofed out of existence. And it isn't arrogance. You could call it confidence and loads of it. Hey, he was cut off as two hands shot out that grabbed both of his ankles and he was pulled underground all the way to his neck. Doden. Shinju Zanshu no Jutsu. Earth release. Double suicide decapitation technique. Whatever you say, Naruto. That load of confidence would have gotten you killed if I were anybody else, he said with an eye smile while covering his Sharingan with his headband, knowing he was the real Naruto and not another clone. With another pop, the other Kakashi went up in smoke. Damn it, I was so close. I thought I had you this time, said Naruto with a pout while deactivating his Shinwagon and receiving a sigh in return. Yeah, I'll admit that was close, stated Kakashi, making the blonde smirk before Naruto could respond. Kakashi added, but you still have a lot of training to do before you can beat me, said Kakashi with a childish smirk, not that you could tell with most of his face covered up. Oh yeah, Cyclops. Why don't we go another round and see who wins this time, or are you a chicken? Replied Naruto while hopelessly failing to get out of the ground so he could pummel the scarecrow's face in. Kakashi I smiled while waving his finger back and forth and making tisk sound, making the blonde try even harder to get out of the ground. Sorry Naruto. Maybe next time. Right now, we have to go get your other two teammates from the academy, remember? He said while doing a few hand signs and stomped the ground, which Naruto raised up and out of the ground. Fine. But next time I'ma kick your ass, Kakashi ni. You hear me? Naruto said, yelled at the one-eyed Junin, who seemingly was engrossed in his Ika novels or whatever you want to call it. You say something, Naruto Otudo? Asked Kakashi with an eye smile. Naruto had multiple tick marks and without saying another word left in a swirl of wind. Did I say something wrong? The one-eyed Junin said with his same traditional eye smile still in place. Academy 10 minutes later. Where the hell are they? Screeched the pink banshee, making Sasuke cover his ears with his hands. Not that he could really blame her for how long they've been waiting for. It's almost been 3 hours. I swear the next time I see Naruto Baka, I'm gonna kill him. Screeched Sakura again. As if on cue, Naruto made his way through the window and Kakashi through door. They both said simultaneously, sorry I'm late, a black cat crossed my path so I had to take the long way around. Naruto and Kakashi had a look of shock on their faces and said again, you too? Which they both nod. Yeah, It's the third time today. The ex-Anbu captain said. Man, that cat's a. Replied the blonde with a raised fist. Both Kakashi and Naruto burst out into a fit of laughter while getting two angry glares in return. Kakashi turned to the other two in the room and said, I like this kid, he even had me believing that haha. Sakura had a tick mark the size of Hokage Mountain and screeched out, liars. You're both liars. We've been waiting for 3 hours for you two. Kakashi, Naruto, and Sasuke covered their ears to prevent from ruptured eardrums. Damn, Ms. MC. Pipers, take a chill pill, rub your forehead or something. Damn, I think I went deaf. Said the blonde while digging in his ear with his pinky. What was that? Screeched the pink-haired girl again, making them cover their ears again. Whoa, calm down. Since everyone is here, meet me on the roof in 5 minutes. Said the silver-haired scarecrow before leaving in a sealess leaf shunshin and not be outdone by Kakashi. Naruto left in a swirl of wind. Sasuke, who saw it, looked on in shock. Sakura wasn't really paying attention since she was fuming to herself about having to wait for 3 hours for her sensei and the dead last of their class doing kami knows what. Heh, if only she knew. How does the Dobi know how to use the shunshin? It doesn't matter, once Adobe always Adobe. Sasuke mused to himself while making his way to the roof and leaving Sakura fuming before she followed after the Uchiha Academy's roof 6 minutes later. About 6 minutes had passed and finally Sasuke and Sakura made it to the roof of the academy. They both saw Kakashi leaning on a handrail and Naruto was sitting on the stairs in front of Kakashi. You're late, Kakashi exclaimed, making Sakura fumed even more, and Sasuke just gave his normal response, HMPH, while he continued his walk and sat on the stairs next to where Naruto was sitting. Coming from the person who was 3 hours late to meet their genin for the first time. Sakura screeched, making the males cover their ears, again. Well, that is true, but I am your Junin sensei, so that means I outrank you, and when I say 5 minutes, I mean 5 minutes. And who said I would be 3 hours ago? A shinobi never reveals what time they arrive because little information like that could get you killed. Replied Kakashi in a nonchalant tone while turning a page of his book and continued reading, which made Sakura fume even more, if that was even possible. Kakashi looked up from his book once Sakura sat down next to Sasuke and closed his book with snap, putting it away in his weapons pouch. Clearing his throat, he said, Okay, introductions are in order. So why don't you all start off with introducing yourselves? Introduce ourselves, what are we supposed to say? Asked Sakura with a confused expression. You can start off with your name, then the things you like, dislike, hobbies and your dreams for the future, things like that, he said in his same nonchalant tone. Could you start off to give us an example of what you mean? Asked Pinkett, which received a sigh from the blonde. For the girl who graduated the top of her class for the kunoichis, you sure are pretty dense, said Naruto while he was eating an instant cup of ramen. Wait, how in the hell did he have tea? You know what, never mind. What was that? Exclaimed a furious Sakura with a tick mark growing on her forehead. Whoa, calm down, Sakura-chan. Wouldn't want you to burst a blood vessel in that head of yours and lose the little brain cells you actually have left from all that screeching you do, replied Naruto with his patent foxy grin. I'm gonna kill you, screeched Sakura before she could lunge at Naruto. Kakashi spoke up. That's enough. Sakura, sit down and stop yelling at your team member, and Naruto, stop insulting your team member, and Sasuke, stop pouting as if someone kicked your puppy. Sasuke just looked at Kakashi with a, what the hell, I didn't even do anything, look. We are a team and you need to act like a team. What would happen if I was down for the count and we were on an important mission? What would you do? No answers, didn't think so. We are Team 7. So act like a team. Kakashi looked at his future team and saw Sakura lower her head. Sasuke just glared, probably because of that, kicking his puppy comment, and Naruto just grinned and waved at Kakashi. Kakashi narrowed his lone eye at Naruto and thought, You're actually trying to make me put some work into this. Oh, I got something planned for you, ya little shit. There was an awkward silence that settled between the four that lasted a little over a minute before Kakashi spoke up. Okay, back to introducing ourselves. I'll start off. My name is Hitaki Kakashi. There are many things I like and many things I don't like that I don't feel like explaining. I have lots of hobbies and a dream for the future. Never really thought about. Kakashi trailed off as it seemed he was lost in thought. While that was useless, he only told us his name, thought Sakura, whose eyebrow was twitching furiously. Sasuke just narrowed his eyes at Kakashi and gave a HMPH. Haha, Kakashi ni will never change, ha ha ha, thought Naruto with a grin. Okay, you next, Pinky, said Kakashi, which received a glare in return. Fine. My name is Haruno Sakura. The things that I like is, looked over at Sasuke, squeal. I mean the person I like is. Glancing back over at Sasuke, squeal. My hobbies are. Glancing to you know who, squeal. Dreams for the future. One more glance to Sasuke, another high-pitched squeal, said Sakura with a dreamy look in her eyes. Is there anything you don't like? Asked Kakashi with an annoyed tone. Oh, Ino Baka for trying to steal my true love, replied Sakura. Naruto elbowed Sasuke discreetly, gaining Sasuke's attention, and with a, what? Naruto whispered, that is one crazy fangirl you got there, Tem. She is practically mind you right not. Don't remind me, Dobi. Sasuke whispered back with an annoyed expression. Okay, the kid with the kicked puppy, you're next, said Kakashi, pointing towards Sasuke. HMPH, my name is Uchiha Sasuke. I hate a lot of thing and I don't particular like anything. What I have is not a dream because I will make it a reality. I am going to restore my clan and to kill a certain someone. After Sasuke finished, Naruto and Kakashi slightly glance at each other with a look of concern before looking back at Sasuke. Sakura just looked at Sasuke with a dreamy look. Oh, okay, you're up, my favorite protege, said Kakashi with an eye smile. Sasuke narrowed his eyes on that protege comment while Sakura, well, she was daydreaming about, said Uchiha. Protege? What do you mean by protege? Interrupted Sasuke as he looked over at Naruto, eyes still narrowed. You will find out soon enough, Sasuke. But right now it is Naruto's turn to introduce himself. You had your turn to speak and now it's Naruto's turn to speak. Go ahead, Naruto, said Kakashi with an eye smile. I'm sorry, you say something, Kakashi-sensei? Asked Naruto with an innocent look as if he didn't hear Kakashi. I'm starting not to like you, said Kakashi with the same eye smile. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I couldn't hear you. Naruto replied with his foxy grin. The floor is yours, introduce yourself. Yali idle shit, thought Kakashi. Oh, well, why didn't you just say so? My name is Uzumaki Naruto. There are lots of things I like, such as Ichiraku ramen, Hokage Oji-san, my niece-san, training, working on new jutsu. There are many other things I like, but I would rather not bore you and waste your time with the rest. The only dislike I can think of is waiting 3 minutes for cooking instant ramen. My hobbies are training, reading, eating all the different types of ramen, and new ways to better myself as a shinobi. My dream for the future is to restore the Uzumaki clan and also to become the Hokage, but not just the Hokage but the greatest Hokage, even greater than the fourth, and to bring peace to this hate-filled world, an unbreakable peace. Exclaimed Naruto, who was practically oozing confidence. Both Sasuke and Sakura looked at Naruto with a dumbfounded expression. I mean, who could blame them? Not many people would proclaim what Naruto just said. Kakashi cleared his throat to gain his genin's attention before he said, since we have a better understanding of each other, we can move on. Tomorrow we will have our first mission. What type of mission are we going to have? Asked Sakura with a curious expression. Kakashi just gave her an eye smile before saying, a survival exercise. A survival exercise. What type of survival exercise? Asked Sakura. It is a survival exercise to see if we are good enough to become genin, replied Naruto as he was spinning a kunai around his index finger. If we are good enough to become genin. Wait, I thought we were already genin. We already passed the genin exam. Yelled Sakura with a furious look in her eyes. That exam was just for genin candidates who might have a chance to become a genin. This exercise is to weed out candidates who don't deserve to become a genin. You know what, Kakashi-sensei, why don't you take over? I don't even know why I started talking. You are our superior, why don't you explain it? Said Naruto with a sheepish grin etched onto his face. Kakashi just smiled and nodded. Of the 27 genin candidates that graduated, only 9 will actually be accepted as genin. The other 18, you could say, they will be weeded out and sent back to the academy. In other words, it is a make it or break it, pass, fail test. The chance for you all failing is at least 66%. But if you look on the bright side, you have a 33% chance to pass, explained Kakashi, which received shock look from Sakura and a raised eyebrow from Sasuke. What? Yelled Sakura. She was finally on a team with Sasuke and now they were just trying to take him away from her. Sorry, that's how it is. I will decide if you will pass or if you fail. Be at training ground 3 tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. sharp. Well, that's it, you're dismissed, and I suggest you miss breakfast or you'll puke. Later. And just like that, Kakashi was gone in a puff of smoke. You know what, don't listen to Kakashi-sensei, eat a big breakfast tomorrow, you're gonna need it. Before they could respond, Naruto left in a swirl of wind, leaving the two to their thoughts. I refuse to go back to the academy. I will pass this test and I will be a step closer to my ambition. Sasuke thought to himself before getting up and made his way off the roof with Sakura following suit. Training ground 3 20 minutes later. What the hell do you mean I have to run the survival test? Why in the hell can't you do it? You're the Junin sensei, exclaimed agitated Naruto. I know I am the Junin sensei. You are my genin and as your superior you are doing this and that's final. Besides, it would be good for the 3 of you as team, replied Kakashi in his same nonchalant tone with his traditional eye smile ever present. Kakashi ni, I'm starting to not like you, said Naruto with narrowed eyes. Kakashi just waved him off and said, come on, you know it will be fun. Don't even to deny it. Naruto thought about for a second and grinned. You know what, it actually could be fun. Alright, I'll do it. That's the spirit, see you at 10 a.m. tomorrow, later, said Kakashi before he walked off with his book in hand. Kakashi made it about 10 steps before a black cat jumped down from a tree branch and landed in front of Kakashi. Panic flashed in his lone eye before he started running back towards where Naruto was. Naruto. That goddamn cat is back, run the opposite way as fast as you can before it catches us and gives us bad luck for life, run. Yelled the scarecrow in fear as he darted past Naruto. Naruto looked over to where his surrogate brother was and saw the black cat. Not needing to be told twice, Naruto started running and eventually caught up to Kakashi. That cat is such a... I swear that cat is stalking us, that's the 4th time today. A relieved Naruto said, knowing that the cat was left in the dust. And people think we make up excuses just for fun, if only they knew, trailed off Kakashi as he cried anime tears along with Naruto. Around 5 a.m. Sasuke and Sakura found themselves at training ground 3 waiting for their other team member and sensei. Sasuke decided to walk up to one of the training posts to lean against, and Sakura decided to start pestering Sasuke about going on a date with her. Kami, doesn't she understand I don't want to go out with her? I hope Kakashi-sensei and the Dobi get here soon so we can get this over with and actually start doing some real training, thought Sasuke as he got lost in thought and blocked out Sakura's never-ending bickering and pestering him for dates. 4 hours and 57 minutes later. Where are they? I can't believe they did this to us again, making us sit and wait and doing Kami knows what. I swear if they are not here in 10 more minutes I'm going to kill them, exclaimed Sakura as she was pacing back and forth. Sasuke rolled his eyes out of irritation. One, because his sensei decided it was a good idea to waste his time all day instead of training him. 2, because of his blasted pink-haired teammates' attempts of getting him to go on a date with her and her constant yelling every 5 seconds. And 3 was his estranged teammate Naruto's tardiness and his improved skill. Naruto was a mystery to him. Naruto was the dead last and showed no actual skill as a shinobi, and then graduated, and out of nowhere he could use elemental shunshin, wind if I remember correctly. It didn't matter. Naruto's improved skill wasn't enough to beat him even if he was Kakashi's protege. He was about to have a rude awakening. There was a rustle of wind and leaves as if on cue. A familiar blonde-haired shinobi with a foxy grin appeared out of the shunshin. "You're late," screeched Sakura. Both Naruto and Sasuke cringed from the high-pitched screech that came out of Sakura's mouth. Naruto picked his ear with his pinky and said, "A true shinobi would never say on when he or she arrives, and I'm not late." "Yes you are. Kakashi-sensei told all of us to be here at 5, started off the pink-haired shinobi but was cut off by Naruto. "Actually, Kakashi-sensei isn't here, and since he isn't here, I'm on time," said Naruto, which made Sakura fume. Naruto grinned while he pulled out an apple and started eating it. While he was eating the apple he heard his teammates' stomachs grumble. Naruto gave them a dry look. "I thought I told y'all to eat some breakfast yesterday so you would actually have some energy for today. The both of you are screwed. It's actually gonna be a lot easier now since you didn't have breakfast," said Naruto, which received 2 confused looks from his teammates. "Kakashi-sensei said not to eat or we would puke. And I'm not taking orders from the dead last," exclaimed Sakura. Naruto sighed and replied, "If you actually listened to Kakashi-sensei and weren't paying so much attention to your precious Sasuke-kun, you would have heard he suggested not to eat. He didn't give us a order, he gave us a test and you two failed, which means we all failed," Naruto stated seriously, only to receive a glare from Sakura and a raised eyebrow from Sasuke. "Well, look at the Dobi actually taking something serious for once. Which reminds me, what did you mean by, it was going to be easier since we didn't have breakfast?" asked Sasuke, only to receive an innocent smile in return. Sasuke and Sakura for some reason had to fight down the urge to shiver. "Oh, heh, well, Kakashi-sensei can explain that since it was his idea to do it. Isn't that right, Kakashi-ni?" said Naruto as he looked up to a tree across the clearing. With that said, Kakashi jumped from the tree he was perched on to his genin team. "You're late," screeched Sakura, making the 3 males cover their ears or risk losing their hearing. "A shinobi never reveals on when they arrive. I thought I explained that to you yesterday, Sakura. Instead of complaining, you should have scouted out the area while you waited for me to get here," said their one-eyed sensei in a nonchalant tone, making the pink-haired shinobi fume even more if that was possible. "What did the Dobi say you were going to explain, Kakashi-sensei?" asked Sasuke, only to receive a eye smile from said one-eyed sensei. How should I put it? Well, I'm not going to be giving you the survival test, Naruto is. There was a long awkward silence between the 4 ninja before Sasuke started laughing hysterically. "I'm being serious, Sasuke. You should take this serious or you could wake up in the hospital or even worse die," said the Cyclopean ninja as he pulled out his favorite book and making Sasuke's laughter die in his throat. "You can't be serious, Naruto. The Dobi beat me. I'll pay to see that," said Sasuke as he looked at Naruto, who tossed the eaten apple over his shoulder. "Well, you might want to pay up now so I don't have to wait for you to get out of the hospital, because I want to go and get ramen after this," replied Naruto as he smiled towards Sasuke, who gritted his teeth. "You think you can beat me?" said Sasuke while he glared at Naruto, who could only smiled. "There is no doubt in my mind I can beat you, Sasuke-tem. But please make it a little interesting because I need a warm-up," said Naruto, who stretched out his arms. Sasuke seethed at Naruto's statement. You could never beat Sasuke-kun, yelled Sasuke's biggest fangirl, aka Sakura. Well, I guess we will see, huh, Sakura-chan, Naruto said, putting more emphasis on chan, which Sakura noticed. All of you stop. You are all teammates and should start acting like it. Yes, Sasuke. Naruto will be running the survival test because it will be more interesting. As Kakashi said that, Naruto pulled out 2 bells and held them in his hand, showing them to Sasuke and Sakura. Bells? Asked Sakura with a confused look. Oh no. They're not just bells, these bells have so much more meaning to them, to the both of you, said Naruto as he tied them to his belt on his waist, which received confused looks from his 2 genin teammates. What are you talking about, Dobi? They're just bells, there is no meaning to them, said Sasuke in a matter-of-fact tone. Haha, and that's where you would be wrong, Sasuke-tem. These bells decide if the both of you end up back in the academy or not, the whiskered blonde said with a foxy grin, only to receive 2 shocked faces in return and a lazy Junin to nod to answer their question before they could ask it. But that isn't FA, Sakura started but was cut off by Sasuke. And what happens if we get the bells from you? Asked Sasuke with a eager look on his face. Naruto looked at him with a grin and answered, I go back to the academy. Kakashi looked up from his book before closing it. He reached in his bag and pulled out a timer and 2 small boxed lunches. Once that was done, he gathered his genin team before setting the lunches and timer on the memorial stone. You have till noon to try and get the bells from Naruto, and if you don't, the loser or losers will get tied to the post while the winner eats the food in front of their teammates, said Kakashi before he jumped up to one of the trees to relearn to pay close attention to his genin team. Yep, no relaxing at all. What type of Junin sensei would he be if he did that? Told you, you should have eaten breakfast, haha, said Naruto, only for him to receive 2 growling stomachs in return, which made Naruto grin more. Get ready, Dobi. I'm going to take those bells from you and you will be going back to the academy, stated Sasuke with a smirk on his face. You know, if you ask nicely, preferably, eh? Please, I just might give it to you, said Naruto with a grin. I'd rather take it by force, said the oh-so-confident Sasuke, only for Naruto to grin even more. Suit yourself. You are free to use any weapons or techniques you so choose. Come at me with the intent to kill, because if you don't, you just might end up in the hospital, hey. With that said, let's beg. Naruto didn't get to finish because Sasuke drawn a kunai and charged Naruto with it, only for Naruto to disappear, shocking Sasuke and Sakura. And before Sasuke knew what had happened, he was lying face first in the grass and dirt with his hand behind his back, the one he wielded the kunai in Naruto's foot on his head. Naruto's vice-like grip made sure Sasuke wouldn't be getting up without his say-so. You see there, Sasuke, without a doubt, if this was a real fight you would have been dead. And I didn't even say begin yet. You charged in without knowing your adversary was reckless and stupid. You, being the so-called Rookie of the Year, should have known better. I guess I was right, this is going to be a lot easier than I thought it was going to be, said Naruto, who twisted Sasuke's wrist and arm and put a kunai to his throat to further his point, only for Sasuke to grunt in pain. Get off of Sasuke-kun, Naruto baka, screamed Sakura and received a blank look from her blonde-haired teammate. Naruto released his teammate's wrist and reappeared in his original posture. Sasuke got up slowly and stretched out his arm. Sasuke's face showed it all. His face showed how utterly shocked he was, along with Sakura. Naruto was standing in his original position with his foxy grin. Don't look so shocked, y'all. I've been training with my niece-san since I was 7, said Naruto as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. I thought you were an orphan. You said that yesterday when we introduced ourselves. I thought you had no family, so who is your niece-san? Asked Sakura with the same shocked look on her face. Well, it's Kakashi-sensei, of course. exclaimed Naruto with a grin, shocking his teammates even more if that was even possible. What? Yelled Sakura. Both Sasuke and Sakura looked at their sensei for confirmation at the tree branch he was perched on and received a nod. Sasuke clenched his fists. What the hell was going on? The prankster, the dead last, the Dobi, how could he be better than him? Was he in some sick genjutsu or something? But, why would he hide his skills? Why? It didn't make any sense. With that, there was only one question that needed to be asked. Why would you hide your skills then? Asked Sasuke as he looked away from his sensei and back to Naruto. Honestly, it was Kakashi-sensei's idea. Because if I did it my way I would have graduated my first year. Kakashi-sensei on the other hand wanted me to hone and progress my skills so when I get into the field I'll be ready for almost anything. Which I'm thankful for him convincing me to do so because I wouldn't be as strong if I did it my way. And besides nobody would expect the dead last to amount to anything. I mean, y'all thought along those same lines so I guess I did a good job on fooling everyone about me being the dead last, huh? Said Naruto. Sakura could only nod dumbfoundedly and Sasuke gritted his teeth. In the shinobi world, you always have to look underneath the underneath, because there is always more than meets the eye, said Kakashi in a lazy tone while turning a page in his book. Naruto nodded, that showed he agreed with his sensei. But time was wasting and our blonde hero was ready to get on with the test. Okay, I think that's enough about me, right? So let's get started. Y'all have an hour and 45 minutes left. Time doesn't wait for anyone. So let's begin. Once Naruto said that, Sasuke shifted into his taijutsu stance and Sakura pulled out a kunai and held it in front of her. Naruto smirked as he reached into his kunai pouch, which made Sasuke and Sakura tense, and then he pulled out a book, confusing his teammates. The book was called The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi, which he found in his father's library recently. Naruto rather enjoyed the book even more so once he found out that the main protagonist's name was Naruto. I wonder if my two-san got the name Naruto from this book. Naruto was knocked out of his musings when Sasuke charged him. He never learns, does he? Thought Naruto. Lesson 1 Taijutsu. Said Naruto with a smirk as he blocked a roundhouse kick to the head. After Naruto blocked the kick with his arm, Sasuke threw a punch which Naruto caught with his free hand. Sasuke saw this and using Naruto's blocking arm as a mount, he twisted and spun his body, showing how acrobatic he was, and tried to axe kick Naruto in the face with his other leg. Naruto blocked again only for his eyes to widen once he saw Sasuke reach out with his free arm and ended up touching one of the bells. Naruto reacting quick threw Sasuke and jumped back before he could get a bell. That was close, hey, thought Naruto as he looked back at Sasuke with a smirk. That was pretty good, Tem, but it won't work again, said Naruto, which made Sasuke grit his teeth. Shut up, Dobi. I'm going to get those bells and you're gonna end up back at the academy, said Sasuke in a matter-of-fact tone. Whatever you say, buddy, said Naruto as he started reading his book before he disappeared in a puff of smoke. Damn it, where did he go? Asked Sasuke before trying to find Naruto so he could get a bell before time was up. Leaving Sakura all by her lonesome. How am I gonna be able to get a bell if Sasuke can barely even touch one? I don't want to go back to the academy, thought Sakura before wandering off out of the clearing to go and look for Sasuke to see if he needed any help. So it begins, thought Kakashi while turning a page in his book. About an hour and a half later, Sasuke and Sakura tried time and again to get the bells from Naruto, but to no avail. Even though Sasuke came close to getting a bell once, he never really had a second chance to do so since. Why, you ask? Well, for one, Naruto decided to use a technique, if you wanted to call it that, named Konoha's secret finger jutsu, 1000 years of death. Let's just say that Sasuke was probably not going to be able to sit down for a week after that. And to make matters worse, he was buried neck-deep underground thanks to Naruto after when Sasuke decided to use Kaden Gokaku no Jutsu to try and burn our favorite blonde to a crisp. While Sakura, she tried looking for Sasuke thinking they could work to get the bells together, but once she found him she fainted after she saw Sasuke's head sticking just above ground thinking he was decapitated. Yep, it wasn't looking so good for Naruto's so-called teammates. That was fun, heh, said Naruto as he walked back to clearing where the test first begun. You know you could have went easier on them, right? Said Kakashi nonchalantly without looking away from his book. Naruto just looked at Kakashi as if he grew a second head. Go easy on them. Coming from you. You're kidding, right? Asked Naruto as he crossed his arms. Kakashi looked up from his book and asked, "What are talking about, Naruto?" After that statement, a tick mark appeared on Naruto's forehead. Coming from the guy who made me climb up a mountain with a hand tied behind my back. Oh, stop complaining, it wasn't that bad. Cyclopean Shinobi said while waving off his protege statement. Which made Naruto's tick mark intensify tenfold. With a boulder 3 times my size tied around my waist without using any chakra. I almost died, ya prick. Yelled Naruto, making Kakashi scratch the back of his head sheepishly. Well, if it makes you feel any better, I almost died doing it when I was your age, said Kakashi with his traditional eye smile. No, it doesn't. I wish it did, you sadistic asshole, mumbled Naruto before being cut off by the sadistic asshole, I mean Kakashi. What was that? Did you just say that you wanted to do it again but a boulder 10 times your size next time? Asked Kakashi with the same eye smile, making Naruto fight down the urge to shiver. No. I mean no, Kakashi-sensei. I just said you were a wonderful sensei and the coolest guy that I know. Stated Naruto, hoping his sensei wouldn't do that to him. Yeah, that's what I thought, said Kakashi in his same nonchalant tone as he turned a page in his book. Thought Naruto, thinking of a way how he could get back at his sensei. Naruto was cut out of his musings by the sound of the bell ringing, signaling the test was over. Sighing, Naruto walked over and turned the timer off. After a few of minutes, Sasuke and Sakura decided to come join Kakashi and Naruto. Kakashi jumped down from the tree branch he was on and landed next to where Naruto was standing. Well, it seems the survival exercise is over. Did you learn anything, Sasuke and Sakura? Asked Kakashi while putting his most prized possession back in his kunai pouch, aka his Ika novel. Did we learn anything? He almost killed us, yelled Sakura, which made Naruto roll his eyes. Sakura, you didn't even try to get a bell from me. You even fainted thinking Sasuke was a talking decapitated head. Which I'm not going to lie, that was kinda funny. But yeah, I definitely tried to kill y'all, said Naruto in a sarcastic tone before looking over at the tuckered out Sasuke. I'm not going to lie, Tem. You actually surprised me being able to touch a bell. You have a lot of potential, said Naruto. So Sasuke, did you learn anything? Asked Kakashi as he watched Sasuke debating on what the hell was going on. Yeah, I did, mumbled Sasuke, but Kakashi heard him. Oh, really? And what would that be? Kakashi asked, which made Sasuke clenched his fist until his knuckles turned white. That I need to get stronger. I need to be stronger. It pains me to say it, but I was wrong about the Dobi this whole time. He's better than me, said Sasuke, which made Naruto's and Sakura's eyes widen. Hey Kakashi-sensei, did I just hear what I heard, or am I hearing things? Asked a shocked Naruto. Yeah, you heard right, Naruto. So, Sakura, Sasuke, did you figure out the purpose of the test? Kakashi asked, gaining the two genins' attention. Purpose? The purpose was to get the bells from Naruto, right? Sakura asked, making Naruto sigh. Kakashi replied and said, not exactly, Sakura. Good guess though. But no, The real purpose of this test was teamwork. Normally, there would be a three-man cell versus their Jonin sensei, but with some certain circumstances, meaning Naruto. You three would have had passed with flying colors if y'all three faced against me. With that being said, I decided to do the next best thing, let Naruto run the survival test. But, the both of you still didn't try to work together. Sasuke, you tried to fight Naruto head-on time after time and it didn't get you nowhere. And Sakura, you only worried about where Sasuke was and completely forgot that there was a test going on. You have to work together because there's always a better chance to complete the mission when you are working with a team. To be fair, even if they worked together they wouldn't have gotten a bell, Kakashi ni, said Naruto, making Kakashi turn his attention to Naruto only for Kakashi to smile. That may be true. Which brings me back to you. Naruto, did you learn anything? Asked Kakashi, which made Naruto give him his signature fox-like grin. Now that you mentioned it. Yeah, I did, said Naruto. Kakashi waited for Naruto to go on but quickly realized Naruto wasn't continuing. What did you learn then, Naruto? Kakashi asked. Well, I learned I'm going to have 2 new teammates, said Naruto, which made Sasuke and Sakura perked up and Kakashi smile. What are you talking about, Dobi? Asked Sasuke in a confused tone. You seriously gotta stop calling me that, Tem. Why don't you both check your kunai pouches and find out for yourselves, said Naruto. Sasuke and Sakura did what Naruto told them to do and to their shock found 1 bell each in their pouches. So you did figure it out? Kakashi said, and Naruto nodded with a grin. Yeah, it took me a while but I did eventually, said Naruto, only for Sakura to speak up. Okay, am I missing something? What is going on? Why do we have the bells? So does this mean we are not going back to the academy? Before Sakura could go on, Naruto cut her off. Calm down, Sakura. And to answer your questions, let me explain. Naruto started and continued. You see, it's like this. Kakashi gave you your test on trying to get the bells from me, and with some hidden meaning gave me my own test as well without me knowing at first, until I pieced it all together and figured it out. In the shinobi world there might be a time where we will be fighting enemy shinobi on mission and we might not make it out alive unless one of us has to stay behind and hold them off so the rest of the team can escape from certain death. Like what had happened to the Nadaime, second Hokage, who sacrificed his own life for his team to escape. You see, Kakashi wanted to see if I was willing to take that step to give up those bells to you two, even though it meant I would have to go back to the academy. And to answer your last question, no, all 3 of us aren't going back to the academy. Isn't that right, Kakashi-sensei? Said Naruto with a grin, making said Junin smile. I guess it's official then. Starting today we are Team 7. We will have our first mission tomorrow morning. Meet in front of the Hokage Tower tomorrow morning at 9. Said Kakashi before disappearing in a swirl of leaves. Sakura, Sasuke, and our whiskered blonde hero celebrated. Naruto grinned, Sasuke smirked, and Sakura shook with happiness. They were all happy they were finally shinobi for Konohagakure no Sato. Hey, do y'all mind if I can ask a favor of you two, and I'll promise to help you both with training, said Naruto, which gained Sasuke's and Sakura's attention.